Radiator braces are one detail item AMT did not provide in their Mack R series kit, and as this picture of a real R model shows, they're quite visible at the top of the engine bay. The braces consist of metal rods, bolted at either end, to fittings on the radiator and cab front. Online for sale ads, such as this one found on MarketBook, can be a good source of reference photos. Here, the X shape made by the rad braces across the top of the engine compartment is quite visible. And at the very top of this picture, you can see a portion of the round metal disc that joins the braces together where they intersect at the middle of the X shape. This truck has a slightly different installation, with one of the diagonal legs of the X omitted, presumably for clearance reasons in the center, where the additional intake piping for the tip turbine engine fills up the engine bay. Referring to AMT's instruction sheet, a brace is provided for the air duct piping, but there are no parts to make radiator braces. Interestingly, MPC did provide the radiator braces in their DM800 and DM600 kits, which were tooled way back in the early 70s, even before the AMT Mack was produced. Brackets which attach to the radiator start as a piece of Evergreen 532 H-column with a 1/16 hole drilled in the web. Note that the hole is off-center, with one edge of the hole against one of the flanges. The two pencil marks are made 0.170 of an inch on either side of the hole to create a total length of 270 thou for the finished bracket. Cut the bracket free from the stock length of H-column using a fine-tooth razor saw in a miter box, and then remove the flange farthest from the center line of the 1/16 hole to create a T-shape. It is possible to glue two styrene strips together to create the T-shape. I chose to cut down a piece of H-column for added strength by eliminating the glue joint. Create a notch at the midpoint of the bracket using a round jeweler's file on one of the flanges. Then round off the outside corners to complete the shape of the top half of the bracket. File away the outside corners on the bottom half of the bracket, leaving a square projection in the center, and then round these two corners to complete the basic bracket shape. This approximates the basic contour of the cast mounting bracket. I used 025 styrene rivets, slicing the heads off and gluing them in place to represent fasteners. You can also do this with nut bolt washer castings of a similar size. Two identical brackets are required, which are glued to the radiator tank near the outside corners. Although my example has the brackets being installed to the radiator after it was assembled to the frame, it's just as easy to build these brackets during initial assembly of the radiator on the bench before painting and installation. The next parts to make are brackets which go on the cab end of the radiator brace. For this, I use K&S 132 by 332 brass strip, starting by drilling an 032 diameter hole at one end. Cut off a piece 1/4 of an inch long, clamp it in a vise at the 1/8 inch mark, and file down opposite sides to create a T-shape, which would end up being approximately 1/32 of an inch wide by 1/8 of an inch long. This T-shape doesn't have to be perfectly straight, because it will be hidden out of sight, fitted into a drilled hole in the bottom portion of the pieces where the hood rests on the cab, as shown here. I drilled these holes slightly oversize using a 1/16 diameter drill, and installed the brackets with a gap-filling CA glue. These brackets could be made from styrene strip, but the gluing surface is quite small, so I preferred the added strength of a T-shaped metal bracket inserted into a drilled hole. Model railroad detail parts, in this case turnbuckles, intended for use on O-scale freight cars, are a great way to make clevis fittings for the radiator end of the brace. One turnbuckle cut in half creates two clevis fittings. Glue these to a piece of 30 thou styrene rod, and all that's left to do here is clean up parting lines and smooth out the ends. The same turnbuckles and 30 thou styrene rod can be used to make clevises and push rods for detailing the brake system on your model trucks. Fittings for the other end of the radiator brace are made using K&S 1/16 diameter aluminum tube, with one end flattened using smooth jaw pliers, approximately 1/8 of an inch long. File down this flattened area to 332 long, drill an 0.32 diameter hole in the center of the flattened area, and round off the outside corners. Cut the finished piece off approximately 150 thou long, and the 30 thou diameter styrene rod will fit nicely inside the 1/16 diameter tube. One set of radiator braces ready to be installed. Lengths are approximate, with final trimming to be done as required. 0.32 diameter brass wire is used to install the cab end fittings. Start by gluing a short piece of this wire into one of the fittings. Then slide this assembly into the cab bracket from the bottom side, angling the fitting towards the radiator bracket on the opposite corner. Trim the styrene rod to required length, install into the aluminum fitting, and then glue the clevis to the radiator bracket. Slide a second aluminum fitting over top of the wire onto the top side of the cab bracket, and follow a similar procedure to install the styrene rod and clevis end. Use a drop of thin CA glue to complete the connection at each of the points where the aluminum fittings meet the styrene rod and the brass rod through the cab bracket. Repeat the process for the other pair of braces. If the aluminum fitting is a loose fit in the cab bracket, a pair of self-closing tweezers can be used to hold it in place as shown here. All four braces have been installed. The only thing left to do now is trim off the excess brass rod at the cab brackets and add the round metal disc, which will simulate using 10 thou styrene, where the brackets cross over each other. Styrene disc was punched using the 4.5mm diameter punch, the largest one in the Mack R set, and glued in place at the junction between the X braces. Mack R decal rivets were used to simulate the fasteners, and the excess length of the brass rod has been cut off at the cab bracket end using the track cutting pliers for a square cut. Leave approximately 20 thou of the brass wire projecting to represent the fastener head. Touch-up painting has been done with a fine brush, and the rad brace installation is complete. It's a simple detail to add, and one that helps fill in the engine bay and give it that more complete look. Thanks for watching this installment, and give the rad brace a try on one of your next model projects.